Doing a music streaming service. Very nice for us, Paul. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Overy, the Committee Chairman. This meeting is live on the Council's YouTube website, which means all of us at this end of the table and anyone who speaks as a petitioner or ward councillor will be on the YouTube. Could I ask everyone please, including those around me, because that's where the problem comes, to speak clearly using your microphones, because otherwise we have some problems with the audio feed. I'll do the committee administration, then I'll explain how the meeting runs for the benefit of those who may not have been here before. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
We've had apologies from Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Chamdale substituting.
Thank you. Any declarations of interested matters coming before tonight's meeting? No. There are no matters notified in advance or urgent, and the agenda we will be taking will be the one that was published by the Head of Planning last week, including items 5 to 8. All are in Part 1 and all will be heard in public. This is a meeting of the committee held in public and not a public meeting. That's not semantics, that is just explains the speaking rights, and I will explain those in a moment. The fire alarm goes, we're assuming it's for real, because there are no drills planned, so it's that door there or the door immediately behind me to my right. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least to silent? We have one petition item tonight, the rest are non-petition. Members have all had the report pack. Officers will do a presentation to explain each item. For the item with the petition, petitioners get 5 minutes to address us. You get 4 minutes at green, 1 at amber, and it gets to red, that's your 5 done. For any item with a petition, the applicant or their agent is entitled to address us also, and I'm aware that Councillor Higgins is here in respect of the first item as a ward councillor, and he will also have an opportunity to speak. Members may ask questions of anyone who addresses us. If they don't worry, it doesn't mean they're ignoring you, it just means they've understood what you have said. If there are any particular planning points that come out that we require clarification on, I will deal with those with officers at the end. That's how the world works. The voting members of committee tonight, I'll start on my left tonight just to be different. I'll work my way up. We'll go Councillor Duncan, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Morse, and then coming back down the table, we've got Councillor Edwards, Councillor Rydier, Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Chapman, and Councillor Chamdale. If we get to a tie, then my casting vote comes into play. Other than that, I chair the meeting, but I will not vote on any matter. We have a very full officer team tonight, some of whom are observing and some of whom are going to be working for the evening. Richard Michalski is doing highways. Mandip Malhotra and Richard Phillips are presenting between them, I believe, the various items. James Roger, the head of planning, will offer us advice as required. Luke Taylor from Democratic Services is our clerk. Glenn Egan is our legal advisor, and Kerry Munro is also from legal, but she's just sitting, I think, going to sit and listen and watch. Okay, without any further ado, so in addition to the report, there is an addendum sheet for tonight's meeting which contains some clarifications and updates. Officers will refer to it. The one we won't comment on it any further, and officers won't comment as they go through. The new National Planning Framework has now been adopted, which has necessitated some changes to reference numbers, effectively. So you'll see that referenced in the addendum sheets. Officers won't make a great play of it because it doesn't affect what's in the reports, but we just need to get the items to be accurate. But there are a number of matters of substance covered in the addendum sheet, so hopefully there are copies of that out there for you. Can I please take item 5? I think, Richard, you're taking this one on.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. If we just flick through the presentation. Okay. Yeah, it shows the location plan with the area of the waste store highlighted in pink. That's a constraints plan. You can see the locally listed gull wing building there. You can see the green belt boundaries well in green, and the boundary of the conservation area, which is hatched. That's the submitted location plan, again showing the red line boundary right at the eastern edge of the gull wing building. That's the elevations and plans of the waste store. Again, that's just a block plan showing the siting of the waste store. So that's an aerial photograph of Harefield, eastern boundary of Harefield Hospital. And that's a photograph of the waste store. The application is retrospective. There's more of a close-up of the waste store. It's a slightly longer distance view of the waste store taken from the rear of the gull wing building. And that shows the waste store in relation to the side boundary of the hospital, so there's a fair size gap there. That shows the inside of the waste store, and that shows its entrance on the southern side of the waste store. And that's a view of the waste store from the Hill End Road, and that's from the junction of Hill End Road and Rickmansworth Road. Again, that's another shot of the same. And that's another shot slightly further down Rickmansworth Road. So this application seeks retrospective permission for a waste store to be sited at the main entrance to Harefield Hospital on Hill End Road, which is located within the Greenbelt and also forms part of the Harefield Village Conservation Area. The waste store will be mainly used in connection with the newly completed ITU extension at the rear of the gull wing building. It has dimensions of 16.4 metres long by 4.9 metres deep, with a flat roof some 3 metres to 3.2 metres high above ground level. The building is finished with cedar cladding and has a sedum roof. It is considered that the building would be acceptable in principle in this Greenbelt location, having regard to the policy advice in the site-specific policy for Harefield Hospital, which is PR20 of the Hillingdon Local Plan. It would have an acceptable impact on its openness. The store would also not be harmful to the character or appearance of the conservation area or the street scene. The amenities of surrounding residential occupiers would also not be unduly affected, and it is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. The addendum on this item highlights additional information which has been received from the petitioner and the applicant. Primarily, there are concerns from local residents with regard to the refuse store being accessible by members of the public and refuse also being left on the public highway. The applicants have advised that at no time is refuse left on the public highway. It is moved from the application site to a central bin store via internal hospital roads. The photographs sent to committee members relate to a time when highway works were taking place and the access roads were unavailable. The council is satisfied that the proposals are acceptable, and condition 2, which requires the refuse store to be adequately signposted and kept locked, addresses the concerns raised by local residents. In addition, the applicants have also provided details of landscaping to the front of the store building, which will reduce any perceived visual impact from the local street scene. Thank you, Chairman.
The petitioner on this one, Mr. Pipenstock. If you'd like to take a seat at the table, if you press the button on the middle of the microphone, it will light up. And we will start the timer as you begin to speak.
Thank you very much for coming on. Has everybody received the...
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. No, we haven't.
Well, Did you not receive the email from the Democratic Services circulated?
Well, I rather anticipated that to happen.
Okay, let me pick that up.
That's all right, sorry, through the chair.
Yeah, if they've already been circulated, but I thought they'd gone to all members yesterday. I need to just check where we are with that. If you press the button and begin to speak. Thank you.
This petition is from 51 people living in Rickmansworth Road, Hill End Road, and the first houses in adjoining roads. We have unanimous support to request the closure and removal of the unit. Most people knew nothing about the unit and its use and were shocked and deeply concerned at the lack of consultation. When I first wrote to Mr. Roger, I said, it beggars belief that our planners would agree to a clinical waste store so near to our homes and only 1.65 metres from the boundary. Of course, they hadn't. The objections are on the following grounds, any one of which would justify refusal. This building does not benefit from a planning permission. That's according to Mr. Roger. No ifs, no buts, no planning permission. In the original plan, the IT building was moved back to be less obtrusive regarding views of the locally listed Gullwing building. This was infill and was contained within the envelope of the site. The only controversial unit of the infill plan was the clinical waste unit. This was left out only to be plonked elsewhere. This is forward of the building line and is therefore not infill. The council set a red line boundary beyond which the applicants could not go. We are only asking that the committee enforces its own decisions. This building is on Greenbelt land and in the Harefield Village Conservation Area. The Tenants and Residents Association and the Conservation Panel have both objected. The waste store is out of character and does not enhance the local scene. The officer's report states, it does not appear conspicuous and or unduly dominant, nor out of keeping with the scale of the surrounding buildings. I'd like to know where else there is a large wooden-clad building with a flat roof 1.65 metres from the boundary. There isn't. Impact on the Greenbelt Policy OL2 advises that where proposals are acceptable, in principle, comprehensive landscape improvements will be sought to enhance the visual amenity and open land objectives. This isn't possible in 1.65 metres. The building is too close to the boundary to accommodate planting and maintenance. The hospital is a locally listed building noted for its Art Deco gull-wing design. The bulk waste store neither sits with nor harmonises with anything else on the site in the local area. By definition, Art Deco and utilitarian do not harmonise. Hillingdon Council is under pressure from Heathrow's third runway. Harefield is faced by HS2, the hospital, the Medipark and others. It cannot be seen that allowing rule breaking can become profitable and a way forward. The council must stop this maverick behaviour before it sets a potentially disastrous precedent. I go back to my earlier point. I cannot believe that planners can allow a huge store containing human waste, clinical waste, used needles, human waste from patients with rejection drugs, MRSA and C. diff swabs 1.65 metres from verges and pavements, where mothers and toddlers walk, staff sit and eat, children play, and recovering patients vulnerable to infection push their trolleys. The staff pass is even closer. Common sense rules were broken for 6 months, and hopefully hospital got away with it. Tomorrow they might not. Please remember the photographs showing the open and clinical waste open trolleys. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Judge whether this is right, 1.65 metres from the boundary. Conditions are not the answer when they may not be implicated. Rats, foxes, rodents, flies, etc. can't read. Please, ask me how many conditions have already been ignored. The Chief Executive does not know or doesn't want to know and claims that the doors were locked. Councillor Palmer has seen a timed list of 20 of the 40 visits I made throughout the day and night with doors open in a large wooden shed. This is no health or safety, there is no health or safety, no management, no security, and above all, a lack of common sense. I respectfully request that our representatives, caring for the residents, reject this application and enforce its removal. What a sad advert to put a waste.
We have reached time. I think you have more or less finished.
I have indeed. Thank you very much.
Now, do members have any questions before I let you go? No? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for hearing me.
Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant? Are you looking to speak? Yes?
Yes.
Yep. Blunt? Would you like to come forward? It was on.
Sorry, my name is Vincent Berry. I'm the project manager for the Trust, and I would just like to really just say that all of the points that have been raised were justified, and we've already had action plans in place. I've emailed across this morning details of all the new signage installed, and we are in the process of putting overhead door closers, security magnets, and more procedures in place to get our teams to actually do what our policies say. So all I can do is apologise in this instance. We haven't done it on purpose. We haven't put the bin store up just because we wanted to. We wrongly assumed, as a client, the architect, that it was included within our application, and it was the line just wasn't moved. So I'd just like to apologise on behalf of that, but really just to sort of say everything that we've picked up, we've responded back to straight away. The incident where the Kubota and the waste was on the road was a one-off. As Richard said, it was due to the improvements to the bus stop we were making. That meant the pathway was closed, and I'm hoping to have all planting completed by October, when the planting season is due, and the security systems all set up within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's all I really wanted to say.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Duncan. I go one.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder if you could explain what the rationale was for having the waste store at the front of the building when most waste stores are at the back of the building.
What we're trying to achieve at the moment is not bringing our waste through the main hospital building past visitors, patients and other staff. So what we try to do is escort our waste out the building as soon as possible so it can be collected by our waste porters and then taken round on our internal roads. So we would have tried to get a different bin store location for ITU, but there would have been no use to have the ITU bin store 300 metres away from the ITU. So, okay.
Are you, just a quick question, you're on public or private land at this point, your bin store?
The bin store's all on the hospital ground, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that information. Did you look at any other sites within the hospital grounds?
Oh, we did. We looked at several
locations.
Yeah, we looked at various locations, and due to the close proximity to the ITU and the amount of waste that's created by the ITU, for obvious reasons, for lining and waste, it would have been, shall we say, too many resources to try and transport so much waste so far away from the building, and it was easier to basically take the waste from ITU, put it into a small hold within the main building, and then every few hours then decant that waste into the main waste store and then round the site to our main waste facility.
Right. And could you just confirm what types of waste are stored here? Is it all types, including
yeah, correct, all types.
Hazardous waste?
Yeah.
So when we see these photographs, which you've
I've seen them, yeah.
seen as well, they are very close to public areas.
They are.
And there is hazardous waste that
what we've done
really
is
be accessed by members of the public.
Yeah, what we've done is we've spoken to the security manager and the waste manager who are in charge of that facility, and we've said, look, you need to pull your socks up. So that's why I've personally gone round there today to ensure the doors were locked. The temporary signage has been fitted until the new main signage arrives in a couple of weeks, and we've just placed orders to have new security magnets installed that only our badges will allow trust staff to get into. So with the facility of the security magnets and the overhead door closers, even if a member of staff tried to leave the door open, it would self-close and secure, so no one could get in there unless they were a hospital member of staff.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Morse, you indicated.
You're saying this location has been chosen because it makes the operation of the hospital easier and more functional. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. There wouldn't be a point to have a waste store half a mile away from the ITU where the waste is created. So we're trying to cut down on staffing and having to move it 3 or 4 times and double handling it. So we've tried to keep it as close proximity to ITU. And as I said before, we didn't just build this where we wanted to. We assumed as part of our application it was fine to go there, and it was only recently brought to our attention, and we've tried to communicate back to Hillingdon as promptly as possible.
Okay, thank you. I think that's you done.
Thank you.
Finally, Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. It's not usual that I'm on this side of the table, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. As you all know, obviously being on the committee, that I am really against retro planning applications. For the main reason is what the petitioners have said. They haven't had the opportunity to discuss this or had the opportunity to object to it in the right and correct manner. This was a little bit sneaky because it was sort of done over a period when we first recognised it was over the election time, and obviously we're under purdah and we're not allowed to do too much about it. Even in your current photos, take away the petitioner's photos, that storage area is open as it is. I can't see how that blends into Art Deco. It's beyond me, and that would be one of the reasons that I would say straight away for refusal. And the lighting was a bigger issue, which no one's actually mentioned, that it affected residents if the lights were left on, and I know that Councillor Palmer herself had to, as not knowing whether I was going to be on this committee, had to sort of put that forward. It's not a one-off that those bins are left out. It's on a regular basis, and that's the problem with this whole thing. I don't want to criticise too much, but the process of this whole system of how they're dealing with their waste is beyond me. Most top businesses will have their waste will be on site. Their vehicles would come on site to remove their waste and take it away in a thing. It beggars belief that the contamination of this waste is frightening, and that's what is concerning. That rats can get in here. It's a wooden structure. The doors are left open, and it's beyond me that I would like this committee to actually put residents first, and this time, and actually look at those issues that are actually concerning them. And they are not made-up issues; they're justified issues. Lastly, because the amber lights come on, if you are mindful to put this application, which I really do hope you're not, please, we need stronger conditions. I need that. There is no room there for planting, so I don't know how they're going to overcome that. But I really need the officers and the committee to actually consider something really robust to stop any future problems happening on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Does anybody have any questions to Councillor? Nope. You're good to go. I have also had the other ward councillor, Councillor Palmer, who can't be here tonight, has dropped me an email. She has made the same points as both Councillor Higgins and the petitioners, so I won't repeat them all, but she has effectively endorsed all of the points that have been raised by others, and I will pass Democratic Services a copy of her notes so that at least they've got that. No. I explained the speaking rules before we started, and I have to adhere to those, please. Sorry. We've had the petition, we've had councillors, we've had everybody else. It's now for committee, and who wants to take me along a road on this one? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. The petition was very persuasive with regards to their concerns on the impacts to residents around health. And that is a substantial issue that sits with me. In terms of planning policy, what also sits with me is the impact on the listed building and the setting. And I'm not sure that this does it any favours at all. And the third one is the impact on the green belt. And this is where I'm seeking some guidance, please. And that is around the question of infill. Our policy allows limited infill. What does infill mean? How is the boundary drawn when you're developing inside something as opposed to developing outside? The residents have made the point that this isn't infill, and I would like an authoritative statement on whether or not this is, and whether or not, therefore, it forms part of our policies. Thank you.
Left on this one, because I think the legal officer can give me a comment on that.
Chairman, I think that's one I should defer to the planning officer.
You didn't go to the planning officers, right?
Once I defer, thank you.
Right, I'll go either way.
One point I would say with regard to Greenbelt is the hospital requires a waste store. The entire hospital is Greenbelt. So, in my view, Greenbelt isn't actually one of the key issues, because inevitably we're going to end up a waste store in the Greenbelt. What the more pertinent issues, in my view, I have to say, are the impact of the chosen location on the conservation area and Greenbelt, and the security issues. And I do have a suggestion of an extra condition that might give members comfort on the security issues. If you
yeah, well, I'll come to security in a minute, because that hasn't come up yet, so I know it's going to sooner or later.
I'm sorry, that's not a good enough answer. You might well believe that the impact on the listed building is of greater concern, and I might also agree with you. But on that very specific issue of whether or not this is infill, whether or not a court of law would determine that this is infill and therefore within our policies, or whether this is new development in the Greenbelt, I think is a pertinent factor, and I would like to know that, please.
Can I hold that for a minute and just take the next? I'm going to work my way straight up the table, because I think I saw all three hands, so I'm going to go Councillor Duncan first. I think yours was actually first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do think that this has an effect upon the setting of this building. When I first read the report and saw the plans, it seemed a fairly harmless proposal. Now I've seen the photographs, I'm afraid, much as I sympathise with the hospital, and we know of its value not only to us here in Hillingdon but to many people, and obviously we would seek to support that, but we're here as a planning committee, and it totally obscures the ground floor. This is one of the main entrances. You go into the building, and what do you see? Instead of seeing the listed building, you see this huge store. Yes, I see that it has a green roof. I see it's coated in wood fencing. So on planning grounds, as far as the listed building is concerned, I don't think it's acceptable. I think we can see the building line of the hospital very helpfully from the plans that are submitted. It is in front of that. And this is a very large site. I appreciate the difficulties the hospital has, but this isn't a very tight, constrained site in a very urban setting in the centre of London or something like that, where there's really very little choice. Here, there is choice, and this may have been the best site for the hospital, but that has to be weighed up with what is best for the hospital, with what is best for residents and the environment and the setting as well. And I don't think sufficient care was taken in that. And I can well see that the hospital thought we don't need planning permission for this, and so they put it up. It's just something they need. But in fact, that is a responsibility that they had, even though they didn't know that fully at the time they built this. I think the security issues are spine-shuddering when you think that there is clinical waste of all types, including infectious waste, where this has happened on more than one occasion, where foxes and vermin can access that, and where there are members of the public, children, patients, all sorts of people in very close proximity. I think this needs to be in a much more secure location, further into the site, where it doesn't interfere with the setting, the appearance of the listed building as you come into that, but is still convenient for hospital use, but is not going to present such a blight in both visual and health terms, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oswald, I'll say...
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't have too much to say now because of my colleague. That's great. I always thought the hospitals were invisible on Greenbelt. Obviously, they're not. I tend to agree with a lot of what's been said. Thank the petitioner for the photographs. I've just been through my emails, Chairman. Didn't get the photographs, but that's okay. We've seen them now anyway. My concerns when I first read this report was the security of the store, but that's basically been covered. Even by the representative from the hospital said that there's going to be door closers and everything else. But if that's the case, then that's got to work. That really has got to work, because if that's not going to be manned on a permanent basis, and it isn't, obviously, then that really has got to work. So if anything goes wrong there, well then it's back to where it is now. It's open. And I understand the concerns of the petitioners. I'm not keen on this. I thought this was a reasonable application when I first read the report, Chairman, but now I think it's got a bit complicated now that we've heard the petitioners, seen the photographs, and going further into the report and the comments that have been made, I'm not too sure about this. I think the best thing for us to do, Chairman, would be to invite the applicant to submit a planning application to build this somewhere else on the site, and let's just get this demolished because it's in the wrong place. Don't like the look of it, and as my colleague has said, it's covering the view of a listed building. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I've got the points noted at the minute. Councillor Morse.
I thought the head of planning summed up the issue. Wherever we go here, it's in Greenbelt. And then the issue is this a prominent, and does it affect the appearance of the Greenbelt? And I would say it is. I'm of the same opinion as my colleagues. We looked at this, we read the report, and we thought, yep, this looks okayish. But having seen some of the photographs and looked at the location in particular, I'm not convinced that screening will actually improve the situation. So on balance, I'm aware of policy PR20, we should be trying to assist the hospital, and I took the assurance that this will. I think on balance, I'm agreeing with my colleagues that we should ask for a application in a different location.
Okay. Can the head of planning come back for a moment on the outstanding point Councillor Edwards raised, which I haven't forgotten? I don't do things like that.
It's slightly complicated by policy PR20, which I've actually got in front of me, which is the a policy specific to Harefield Hospital, which basically says infilling and redevelopment proposals for health purposes will normally be acceptable in principle, but it does caveat that it's got to be compatible with the Harefield Village conservation area, and there are some other caveats. The 2 points I wanted to make is that the officer recommendation approval is subject to landscaping, so that's an absolutely key point, and the observations of our own conservation officer and landscape architect who are both effectively that it's acceptable with landscaping. So I'd be keen that members consider this in the context of landscaping rather than just on the photos they've seen. The other point, and it is touched on the addendum, is that the landscaping could even be increased beyond that shown on the plans, and that could be conditioned. But the final key point I wanted to make is that the council in Hillingdon does have access to a Metropolitan Police Crime Prevention Design Advisor. There's actually an expert in these kind of matters based at Ruislip Police Station. So it would be possible to have a condition with words to the effect that within 1 month of the permission that hospital would have to submit details of enhanced security measures that we'd get agreed in conjunction with the Metropolitan Police Crime Prevention Design Advisor. So they would have expert input, is obviously the point I'm making there, and then the condition could be structured such that they're very quickly implemented, whether it's normal wording within a month of being approved. So it would be possible in my view to construct a condition, but the key bit would be my recommendation that if we're adding a security type condition, that we involve the Metropolitan Police Crime Prevention Design Advisor. Now they might add additional measures over and above magnets or door closures. They might be a lot stricter, but I'm taking it as read that would be something that committee and the public would welcome in this particular case, and as officers we would go with the recommendations of the Crime Prevention Design Advisor if the application is approved with the condition as I'm recommending now. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, can I strip this one back a little bit, because I think there's two different issues here, both of which have been raised. But the first, with regard to the security, there are potentially ways we can deal with that, I believe. But the first issue is in my head the more relevant. It's the relationship of this building to the listed building at the front of the site. Now that is the bit that when I read this and saw the first look at it, that was the bit where I was not sure. And the question will then be, would that appropriately landscaped be sufficient to hide it and make it acceptable, which is what the officer recommendation is, or do we still feel it's effectively in the wrong place?
Just to clarify, it's a locally listed building.
It's fine, but it's still a building with merit that we'd wish to protect its surroundings. I don't think anyone's disagreeing with me. I'm not sensing a disagreement with me on that. So I think we need to look at issue one first, because if the building we're saying isn't acceptable, then regardless of how we secure it, it won't matter. The revised officer report talks about additional landscaping. It's a question of whether you can plant enough in between the building and the hedge to hide the building. To put it in neat terms, people who haven't spoken, I'll come back to you, Councillor Duncan.
Could the officer please clarify whether this bin store is infilling or further spread of development into the green belt? You may have already answered the question, but could you please clarify?
I don't think it is infill.
Based on condition PR20, this is an infill extension to the green belt, but it is part of the policy does allow for infill development to support the form and function of the hospital. Therefore, it is infill development, but the policy supports infill in order to make sure that the hospital is operational.
Yeah, I think we're probably struggling on the infill bit. I think PR20 sort of kind of blows us out. But I think it's still relevant as to what the building is and where it is, because I don't think PR20 gives a licence for that, at least not in my reading of it, and someone will tell me if I'm badly wrong in a minute. Any other views on this one before we work out what we will do with it? Oh, Councillor Duncan, sorry, I know it, sorry, I hadn't forgotten.
Well, you asked the question about, yes, I think it's infill, but it's infill in front of the building line, so it's questionable in terms of yes, it is infill, but where it is not actually the best place to put infill, if you like. There are other places you'd put infill. I think if you wanted to disguise this building, hide it, you'd have to have tree planting, quite dense planting, all around it, in which case you then get quite a large area densely planted, which is going to look peculiar and obscure the locally listed building anyway. So I think instead of saying, look, this is in the wrong place, how can we hide it, let's just simply bite the bullet and say, no, I'm sorry, this is in the wrong place. We need to have it relocated. We want to protect this openness. This is, after all, the main entrance to the hospital. This is a locally listed building in the green belt. Are we going to let it be obscured by whatever development and its planting, or are we going to protect that? For me, that is an important factor because this is going to be there a long time.
Okay, Councillor Yarrow I had, and then I'll take Councillor Oswald, and then I'm going to work out a way forward.
Thank you, Chairman, I'm sure you've got a difficult task ahead of you working a way forward. I do agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've said, Councillor Duncan, and we really need to decide, do we need it there or do we need it somewhere else? And there are serious issues involved here with health and safety and what have you. And we can make all sorts of recommendations. None of them actually satisfy us because it's going to have to operate like that before those recommendations are actually put in place. So I'm of a mind to say we need another application and we need it in a different place, and let's get it done now.
Okay, Councillor, I have a way forward in a moment, but I get committee sentiments. Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was going to try this. Why don't we defer this? Because none of us are happy about this. We could defer this and ask the applicant to submit another application for this to be built somewhere else, and then I think we'd probably all be happy.
Well,
well, the point is, Chairman, sorry to interrupt you, but before we go on, the point is this could still be used until then. I'm not saying knock it down now because there's got to be somewhere for the clinical waste to go. I think we all understand that. But it's got to be secure, and it doesn't look like it's that secure at the moment. I know we've been told that works are going to be done, but I think that could be a way forward. Well, just defer don't refuse it, don't approve it, just defer it.
There are two ways forward I was going to offer committee, and you found one of them for me, so that's good. The advice I'm getting at this end is that on security grounds we're going to struggle because it is evident they could adequately secure this. I think the grounds we've got to look at is around its location and where it is. I think there is merit. We could straightforward refuse this, but that doesn't really help the hospital. Although inevitably it wouldn't mean it being demolished anyway, certainly in the short term. I think there is merit in deferring this and having negotiations between planning officers and the applicant to see if we can find a better way of dealing with the hospital waste issue. It is evident from everything I've heard, and I haven't heard anybody come out in favour of it yet, which is interesting. I've had 6 speakers, all of whom have, in various ways, articulated the same issues. They've picked different ways to do it, but they've effectively articulated the same issues. So I think there's a merit in... James?
I might slightly contradict you, Chairman. I actually think there's 2 options for the committee. You can either get the applicant to give you a robust justification as to why they can't put it anywhere else, or you basically say yes or no on this location. Because the applicant can't... I don't think you can ask the applicant to effectively change this application to a different location because it's a retrospective, and I think the applicant wants you to say yes or no to a bulk store at this location. If you did wish to defer, you could ask the applicant to give a robust justification why they can't put it anywhere else. Or you could ask the applicant in some way change the proposal, but I'm not sure what they can do because to try and mitigate harm, they propose landscaping, and I'm not sure there's much more they can do.
I'm not keen. I'm keen to work with the hospital on this one, so I think a refusal would... If this wasn't a hospital site, let's be clear, I think everyone would happily move refusal, and we get an overturn fairly swiftly here tonight. So, could I suggest that somebody will move a deferral for me to allow the applicant either to provide a robust justification why this is the only possible location they can have, or come up with something different? I'll take whoever's... I've got hands everywhere now. This is always good. I'll take Councillor Oswald and Councillor Chandel as he hasn't spoken.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to refuse this, but I'm certainly not going to approve it. I prefer the deferment so that negotiations can take place. Other than that, if we can't do that, then we've got to refuse it.
Well, I think we defer it tonight and see.
Well, I'm going to move that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Chandel I had, and then Councillor Chapman, if you're going to do something different to what Councillor Chandel... Second it. Okay, Councillor Chandel...
No, Chairman, thank you for that. Yeah, I was going to second it, but on the lines also that the Hospital Trust, when he made his speech, he did say the reason for citing it there was economic as well. It's a cheaper way to do it for what I understood, less manpower or whatever.
Well, let's let them come back with if they can absolutely justify whether that is the only possible place in the whole of this big site. Well,
they understood they made a mistake. They shouldn't have built it there. They didn't have the permission. I'm sure if they had put the application in, had residents to actually raise a petition, show how strongly they felt, I'm pretty sure they would have cited it somewhere else.
Okay, I've got a proposer, I've got a seconder for deferral. All those in favour of deferral, please show. That's unanimous. Good. That's that one done. Well, done for tonight. It'll come back again. Okay, item 6. I'm just going to preempt the planning officer's presentation. Item 6 is an item that's already been agreed. The applicant has come back and asked for removal schedule for the requirement for a travel plan. Relatively small development. It's not something we can absolutely insist on, so I'd be happy for a proposer.
I propose we go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. Uxbridge Sports Club, Park Road, Uxbridge. Mandy, are you presenting this one?
Thank you, Chairman. The application is for full planning permission for a new extension, including a new platform lift, a DDA, a disabled compliant WC toilet, and a small reception desk, accompanied with some external works. The application also includes internal alterations to include a new ramp and opening to make it more accessible. If we go through the plan, so this is the application site. Set within its local surroundings, within the athletic stadium to the right and the bowling green to the north. That tries to demonstrate in very small text how small the extension is going to be to the building. This is the existing plan ground level. The proposed plans on the right hand side show a small area of extension, and then the lift proposed ground floor level, again showing the new access ramp in order to accommodate the extensions and facilitate disabled access into the property. Detailed plan of the front entrance, and then there is some nominal signage on the proposed front elevation. Here are some images of the application site. There is an addendum on this item, and that's primarily to seek materials that will match the existing building to ensure that the extension isn't built completely ad hoc to the existing building. That was missed at application stage. The proposed works have been designed to ensure that the sports ground retains its architectural composition, functionality, but is DDA compliant. It's considered that the proposals would not have any significant impact on the openness of the greenbelt within this major developed site. As such, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Yarra, then Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Duncan.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendations, please.
Okay. I'll second.
Does anybody else have any other issues they wanted to raise? Good. Fair enough. It's been proposed. If no one has any other queries, all those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's approved. Right, then we come to the St Andrews Park, which is an outline application only.
It is. The members should note that there is a fairly lengthy addendum to this item. If we start with the first issue, and that's that this application doesn't actually relate to the land that is all outlined in red. I did prepare a plan just to try and demonstrate it only relates to that area roughly outlined in white on this plan. So it's the central location within the RAF Uxbridge site. Obviously the site looks quite different to that aerial photo, as most of it's been redeveloped from the south upwards, and parts of the development up here are under construction. So if we go back a step, this plan is just to demonstrate that we're talking. So this is the phasing plan of the outline planning permission that was granted some time ago, which has now lapsed. But this application site relates to this central phase in this brown colour. So the blue to the north is what is proposed as the town centre extension site. and predominantly land to the south of what is the application site are all the dwelling houses which are under construction, some of which are actually occupied at the moment already. The application within that brown area is for outline planning permission, including means of site access only. All other matters are reserved under this application. The proposal seeks the erection of up to 90 dwellings, so that's an indicative number for the time being, and then the final numbers will be resolved through the reserve matters phases. As I mentioned, the application site is part of the former RAF Uxbridge site, which is predominantly residential-led mixed-use development. The proposed intensification of this site, for context, under the outline master plan, this application proposed 27 townhouses, and that's what the current application proposes an uplift to provide up to 90 residential units within the same land parcel. In essence, it's deemed to be an acceptable uplift in terms of proposed development simply because it is so close to the proposed town centre extension. It's a sustainable location. There has been the delivery of affordable housing linked to the 27 townhouses, but we are going to seek to secure 35% affordable housing on all of the uplifts that the application is delivering under consideration today. You'll see from the heads of terms there are actually two options for the delivery of affordable housing. If we don't secure the current 27 affordable housing units from the outline consent, we will seek a full 35% delivery from everything under the 90 unit scheme. So we are trying to maintain that we will secure the maximum provision on this land parcel, whatever the circumstances may be in a few years' time. Slightly complicated, and I apologise. So the addendum highlights primarily one change that the applicants are seeking, and that is the proposal that we were initially seeking one-to-one car parking on the application site. Now, under the outline permission, most of the land within the blue area is delivering a parking ratio of 0.6 spaces per unit, and that's primarily because it is in a sustainable town centre location. The area to the south, however, was delivering policy compliant one-to-one parking. We are proposing to amend the parking condition to propose 0.7 parking ratio for this application phase because of its proximity to the town centre. Subject to the attached conditions and the appropriate Section 106 agreement, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay. Views on this one, and we are outline only, so there's not a lot to take in. Oh, there's a couple more comments, sorry.
I will just go through the plans. Now, because this is an outline only, we have secured that the parameters do meet the separation distances that we normally require, so the 15 and 21 metres. However, we will get the fuller details once we receive the reserve matters for design, layout and so on. So whilst this application plan shows 2 blocks here, those 2 blocks do meet the 15 metres and the 21 metre separation distances, but we will assess that further and bring it back to committee when the applications are provided to us in detail. I don't think I have a huge number of photos for this site, primarily because it's mainly closed, but I think most of you have seen it. This is the Mons block, which is located to the south of the site. Thank you.
Councillor Morstan, Councillor Edwards, I think, on this one.
Well, obviously, I'd like to. We've got another tricks analysis, and my concern is, when I look at TfL, they seem to be reaching considerably different conclusions as to traffic movements, which I would like to get the basis of. When I look at the tricks site, it also goes on to recommend that if we have a movement policy, we have a follow-up survey. Now, it appears to me that on this enormous site, we've injected a lot of local traffic, and I would think one of the things we can actually put into the conditions is that the company doing the development actually pays for it, so that after the site is completed and traffic's moving, because we may well have a number of areas where we've got traffic with difficulty. You've seen the size of the application and the traffic we have been present. So these are a couple of points I'd like to clear up. So I'd like to know exactly what you think of TfL's view that we're under assessing the traffic. Mandy?
Sorry, I didn't know which one you said.
That's all right. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, certainly for this quantum of development, it's not an actual massive uplift in traffic movement, statistically speaking, whichever database you use, whether tricks or travel. Certainly in peak hours, we would be anticipating two-way movements of between 20 and 30 additional vehicles to the existing loading the existing network. It's certainly at a figure now that it wouldn't really upset the balance of operation or traffic flows, we believe. And certainly as part of the whole RAF Uxbridge development, certainly all of this would have been taken on board as a sort of anticipated impact. So this site was always available for development, and it would have been encompassed within that operation. So certainly there are no real firm concerns with regards to movement, because we anticipated that the site would be developed in any event. And here we are anticipating figures of not extreme figures of additional traffic flows. And to highlight that the TRICS databases and travel databases are it's very difficult to find a very like-for-like comparative. It's more of an estimate, and it is only a comparison tool. It's not precise, and so there can always be sort of judgments one way or the other. Hence, the TfL view may be slightly different. But I think we take a sort of broad overview that it will not really be problematic in essence.
And in fact, if I read TfL's second set of comments at the bottom of page 52, they are kind of accepting that point.
Yeah, I still would like an answer to the fact why we don't actually have condition it with a monetary survey after the completion, because this is what the TRIC site actually recommends when you start looking at the data, because I've run into this twice now, so I started looking at their website and how they do it.
Well, Chair, if I may, yes, TRICS recommend that because obviously this will feed into their database at some time in the future. So, so it's understandable. There's no real material harm in doing it. It can be done, and obviously the database wants to be updated. So there wouldn't be any strong reason not to do it. However,
can I draw this to? I'm going to draw this to a close now, in respect of that item, Councillor, because we are considering at this point an uplift of 63 units. So we can't impose the full planning permission for this site has all sorts of things in the traffic proposals. We've got to consider what we do now in relation to 63 units and whether that's reasonable. The officer view is this is acceptable. TfL are accepting that. So I think we've probably exhausted that. Now, obviously, what is on the whole of this site is a different ballgame, and there are large numbers. But we've got to look at what we're doing here, which is an uplift of 63 units, which in the context of this site isn't a big. Well, it isn't big in general terms. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. My question is the move away from 27. What I would lead to believe would be large family homes into 90, and I presume smaller 1- and 2-bed homes. How does that impact, if at all, on any outline agreement right at the beginning that was shaping this whole area to be a mixed development and not end up as a dormitory 1- and 2-bed flats across the lot?
James, please.
I think if it was a site in isolation, that might be something we could look into further, but the problem with that kind of argument on this particular site is the entire development to the south is full of family houses. So the development as a whole is a mixed community. So yes, it is the case that there is a loss of larger family units here, but the point we were at quite pains to achieve was actually achieving more affordable housing out of this uplift, which is what the 106 agreement will achieve in this case.
I've got Councillor Oswald and Councillor Duncan. I don't think I'm going to be else indicating.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I agree with the comments that my colleague, Councillor Morse, has said. We've got some concerns about traffic generation that traffic this site's going to generate. But I'm going to move the application, Chairman. My colleague wants to speak as well.
I'll hold.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to see that 70% of the affordable housing will be to rent at affordable rent, and only 30% at the intermediate, which I think is less accessible to poorer people. I wanted to ask about condition 19, which is on the addendum sheet, where it's to be reworded, and it talks about the low emission strategy shall have targets for emission reduction and timescales with pollution savings quantified, and that this is done through an implementation plan each year. I wonder if the officer could just tell us a little bit more about that, please.
We're seeking to ensure that this development, over and above what we can't consider under the outline permission, provides low emission by virtue of its proposals. Because it's in outline, at the moment they won't have a low emission strategy, so vehicles, fuel, etc., but they are required to provide us with one in order for us to be ensured that they don't need to provide an offset contribution for not meeting appropriate targets. Because it's in outline, we can't give them, we can't assess what hasn't been provided to us, but we will secure mitigation if through reserve matters we're not getting a low emission strategy that's satisfactory to us. That's effectively what the condition is trying to do. The reason we split it up is primarily because the air quality officer has put within paragraph 1 and 2 of the condition suggestions of how to put the low emission strategy together. We can't enforce suggestions, therefore we've put the suggestions as an informative, and we've asked the applicant to just comply with the requirement to provide a low emission strategy and relevant targets thereafter.
Could I ask that when these strategies are implemented and the monitoring takes place, do we have input to that? Because residents are starting to say to me that they're seeing pollution monitoring, but it always seems to be, up high at a level where nobody walks, for example, or several metres away from the road, and that, close to areas where you need to get that reading, if you like, to be accurate. They're not seeing that. So would this be part of that?
I'll pass that to Head of Planning, if I might.
Right, thanks.
I think we're slightly starting to stray away from the sort of details of this application, more into something that through a members' inquiry process the air quality officer could do a quite detailed response on. Effectively what we're doing is putting the right condition in place so that we address the low emission strategy and air quality issues, but I think that level of detail will be something I can get Val Beale to give much greater clarification on. But I think if we go into that level of detail, I am mad it may be in danger of misinforming committee because we're not air quality experts ourselves.
Okay. Can I just ask then that if that level of detail should be necessary in this condition, that we as a committee would agree that be necessary if the officers need to do this. It is an outline application, and what we say now, we can't suddenly jump up and ask for something else later on at the detailed stage. So we've got to get that right now, and that's the reason I'm asking for it. Thank you.
I'll take the Head of Planning's view. I'm not sure how much further we can go. That's my problem, because I think the issue is we will struggle to be technical experts. If the air quality officer tells us he's got absolutely everything he needs and absolutely all works, unsure what committee will be able to add to that, as with all of these technical conditions when they come forward for discharge. Yep. The Head of Planning is happy. Right. The Head of Planning's happy. I've got a proposer on this one. I'll take a seconder.
I'll second the recommendation.
Okay. Can I push that to the vote then, please? All those in favour, please clearly show me. Thank you. That one's approved. Thank you very much indeed. That's the end of major applications. I'm going to take 10 minutes or so. I'll start the North round about 7:15.